Well, our next guest is going to spit some bars for us. He's also a renowned educator who fuses the urban world and the classroom. Dr. Christopher Emdin is a professor of education at the University of Southern California, USC, and author of numerous award-winning books, including his latest STEAM, Make, Dream, Reimagining the Culture of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. He's also the founder of Hip Hop Ed, a social media movement. And we say good morning to Dr. Chris Emdin hanging out with us. Thank you for starting your day with us. Good morning to you, my brother.
Good morning, dear brother. How are you?
I am doing great. I know you're out here in Southern California teaching, but you're back in New York. I think you got New York roots. So you got New York roots. As a black man, you're going to have some hip hop in your blood. But I want to know what inspired you to fuse hip hop and education.
Well, you know, the traditional education system has not engaged black and brown children. I go into classrooms across the country and I see young folks just not enthusiastic. They can't wait to get out of the classroom. You know, they're bored, they're disengaged. And then I go see them on a corner when they're in a hip hop cipher, or I see them in a hip hop concert, or I see them singing a hip hop song. And they're excited, they're motivated. An album comes out on Tuesday, they know all the lyrics by Thursday. And so I'm saying to myself, if this is happening in hip hop and it's not happening in the classroom, we got to bring some hip hop into the classroom. So that's really the motivation of the work, just observational, you know what I mean, criteria to reimagine the classroom, bro.
And I love that, man, because you got to connect with your students. You got to do something if they're in the hip hop. I don't care if it's other students in country music. We'll talk about that as well. Find some kind of way to connect with these kids in order to make education a little bit more exciting so they're not sleeping in the classroom. But I want to ask you, because this is really important for me, because STEM or STEAM now, they just had to add the E to it. I mean, the A to it or whatnot, but it's okay. STEM, STEAM, whatever you want to call it. How is hip hop influencing this generation into getting more into STEM, or the older generation to reintroduce them to STEM or STEAM?
You know, for me, I've done a bunch of projects across schools where I just challenge young folks to write raps about what they're learning in science. And of course, initially they're like, nobody write no rhymes about science, that's trash. You know, that you get that energy. And then you say, well, if you must not really be nice with the bars if you can't incorporate some science into it. And so you challenge them. Our children want to be challenged. They want to be motivated. So when you hang that in front of them and say, well, you can't really do it, all of a sudden they're coming up with these amazing complex rhymes. And then we don't just make it there. We start, you know, if you think you're that nice, go battle a kid in another school who wrote his own science raps. Now you got a whole competition around hip hop, and then bring it to the whole city level. And then we introduce them to hip hop artists who might like science. We introduce them to scientists who are hip hop that they never heard about. So it's about just reimagining the whole thing. You know, do you know that if you wanted to design a sneaker, you got to know some engineering? Word, Dr. E, I ain't know kicks had anything to do with science. All of a sudden, they're more motivated to do well in science. So it's really about expanding the worldview. And it's also about introducing them to folks that could be new heroes. And sometimes hip hop becomes the mechanism to introduce them to heroes in STEM.
I loved your energy. I mean, where were you when I was in school? I mean, I would never have gone to sleep in your classroom. And since you're talking about writing some rhymes, I might put you on the spot a little bit later. So just put that in the back of your mind right now. But STEM,
no problem.
STEAM, I keep saying STEM. STEAM now, I know the arts. I love the arts. Obviously, I'm in the arts as well. Huge field. But I was just talking about this with somebody who's actually in STEM over the weekend about the lack of black folks still being in that career field. I think it's less than 5% in Silicon Valley. Is that confusing to you when you realize how much we actually use STEM, especially the technology part of STEM?
You know, black folks are always the consumers of all the new technology, and you don't see them being the producers of that technology. And what's fascinating to me is that black folks have always expressed the innovation, the creativity, the nimbleness, the anti-authoritarianism, like all the characteristics of the best VCs in Silicon Valley, all the skill sets of the most amazing scientists and mathematicians you actually find in black communities, you actually find in hip hop. And so for me, it's always mind-boggling that we express these skills in our own sort of like cultural expressions, but we never get an opportunity to be able to utilize it in STEM or in STEAM. And when we say STEAM, we say it for a reason, because, you know, it's about art and culture. In most artistic and cultural expressions, there's a complex technical aspect of it that we don't even know is scientific or mathematical. I mean, we got kids right now across the United States who are downloading software off the internet and they're creating beats, and they built their own home studio, and those kids would never be named as scientists and never be named as mathematicians, but they're using science and math skills to be able to create this artistic and cultural phenomenon. So for me, it's about just making it plain, letting these babies know, yo, you are a genius.
Yeah.
You are a descendant of Harriet Tubman. She was able to identify Polaris in the night sky without a college degree. She was a scientist without knowing how to read or write. And if you are her legacy, you could do it too. So the whole thing is about expanding it, because listen, to be engaging in STEM for Black folks is essential, because we got millions of jobs in STEM that are unfulfilled. A STEM employee makes 26 times more dollars than an average employee. So it's not even just so you could showcase your genius, it's also so you could get this bag. There's a bag out there for our babies, and they have the skill set to be able to do it. And schools have not allowed them to connect to these disciplines. And so that's where I step in. We got to get it done.
Man, you better preach. Man, you make me want to go back to school to get some more education, man, to go back to college or what. I got a couple of seconds here before I go, man, but when it comes to the hip-hop aspect, it's good if you can actually, or you're into hip-hop, and we know that you're into hip-hop. All teachers aren't into hip-hop. They don't know that, so they're not going to feel that or whatnot. So is it important for them to find their connection with their students whatever way possible? It could be hip hop, it could be R&B, it could be country music, it could be in painting, it could be any way, but the importance is connecting with the kids.
Absolutely. I make the argument all the time that every educator has to find their authentic self. Most teachers go into the classroom and they're not themselves. So the young folks can't be themselves. And, you know, shameless plug, I wrote this book called Ratchetdemic, Reimagining Academic Success. And the premise behind the book is that every individual has to find their ratchet self. It could be your country ratchet, your golf ratchet, your hip hop ratchet, that raw expressive self. Then you got to combine that to your academic self. And if you could bring the ratchet and the academic together as an educator, then you can connect to young people. But I also want to make this point. Yeah, those folks may not be into hip hop, but guess what? Young folks ain't into Shakespeare, but you make them learn Shakespeare anyway. And so for me, part of this work to bring hip hop to education is to help these folks who might not see hip hop as having academic or intellectual potential to be able to see the beauty and power in hip hop. Somebody writing rhymes is genius. You try to write a rhyme for the first time, you realize it ain't easy. So it's about young folks and educators finding themselves, but it's also about them finding a reverence and a respect for the intellect necessary to engage in hip hop. So everybody has to be their authentic selves, but you also have to have a reverence for our culture. If we have to learn your culture and it's not something that resonates with us, fine, we'll do it. But you also have to have a respect and reverence for our culture as well, and hold it in high intellectual and academic standing, just like you would anything else in the established canon.
Bro, I was going to ask you at the end of this interview to drop some bars on us, but you have been dropping so much knowledge in bars. I don't need you to spit any bars, and we're running out of time. You are incredible. I need you to come back on our show often, because we need to hear from educators like you. STEM, STEAM, Make, Dream is available at your nearest bookstore or on Amazon. Dr. Chris Emdin, you are the man. Thanks for stopping by and spitting those bars to empower us around STEM education.
Thank you for having me, brother.